Say cheese. Okay. Full disclosure, I'm not really the biggest fan of this era of Spielberg. Now, this is an era that, to me, began with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and spanned over into this year. You know, where he insists that he's turned his focus into mature, adult filmmaking without dwelling in the past, while at the same time fully leaning into dwelling in the past. You have Indy 4, which was supposed to be like the final statement of the Indiana Jones series. You know, like, that was gonna be it. And happens to deal with aliens. So, that's point number one. Next up, you got your adaptation of a classic comic book series like Tintin, you have war films, historical dramas, video game nostalgia, children's literature, and more recently, a remake of a classic musical, his own cinematic biography. And now, with Disclosure Day, he comes all the way back to Aliens again. And yes, I know, I'm fully aware that those tall gray dudes in Indy 4 were supposed to be, well, not aliens, but interdimensional beings, but I mean, come on. Just come on. Yeah. I ain't buying it. Now, on the one hand, it's kind of nice seeing Spielberg go back to basics, to what made him extra famous in the first place. However, I can't help but feel that we've been here before and seen it done so much better. So yes, it is familiar territory, but somehow lacks the sense of wonder and awe that his films have become so well known for. Okay, you know what? That thing is really loud. I need to turn off the air conditioning. Holy shit, that is so much better. Let's resume. Now, after seeing the trailers and eventually the film, it's clear that this was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, two strangers getting wrapped up in extraterrestrial phenomena against their will, sharing some kind of psychological connection before inevitably crossing paths with each other and sharing in the grand finale. That old song and dance. And I appreciate that this film, at least to me, feels more intimate and focuses a lot more on the characters' relationship than Close Encounters does. But, and I've watched Close Encounters and E.T. After coming back from the theater, those two movies, especially Close Encounters, had a lot more, I'm gonna say, momentum, enthusiasm, and had me fully invested by having the story being driven by the sheer mystery of what's going on. Now, we more or less assumed, oh, okay, well, it's aliens, no shit. But we were all keen to know where all of this was leading to and what it all meant in the end. Now, you may have noticed that I've been talking just a little bit more about Close Encounters than the film that we're supposed to be talking about. Yeah, it kind of just shows just how interesting Disclosure Day really is. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's just not that good. Now, it's not that bad, but it's not that good either. It's also nowhere near his worst film, not by a long shot. But I'm most likely not going to remember it by the end of this video. Honestly, it's just kind of ridiculous. Now, in one of the promos for the film, Spielberg stated that he believes that full disclosure will bring us together somehow and reassure us that we are actually not alone in the universe. And that's supposed to put us in a better mindset and have us know our place in the grand scheme of things. I can tell you with 100% certainty, it will not. Especially at this point in time. You don't need me to tell you that. Just think of all that's going on in the world right now in the year of our Lord 2026, and then have some guy roll up and say, oh, by the way, aliens. Yeah, that guy would be the first one to be told to shut the fuck up. I mean, we're living in a time where the media, particularly the news, is severely untrustworthy, and this movie thinks that broadcasting the news that the US government was in fact hiding information about alien encounters on Earth being real and thinking that everybody would completely buy into it. No. No. With something like this happening in the real world, you'll probably get these following reactions. Either, ha, I fucking knew it, pay up. Or, oh my god.
Oh my god!
Or the most likely of reactions, oh. Yeah, okay. I have other things on my mind right now. But I suppose in movie land, you would more or less expect people to react like they would just stop what they're doing and have the exact same reaction worldwide. The Earth literally standing still as they realize that they are in fact not alone in the universe. And that the government has been hiding secrets from the public. Like, yeah, no shit. We more or less assume that already. Honestly, this probably would have done better maybe 30 years ago. I don't know. Or maybe it would have been more interesting if the film had focused more on the aftermath of the revelation rather than the day of the announcement. I don't know, that's just my opinion anyways. Maybe then we would have had a better understanding of what the villain was so concerned about and would further emphasize the stakes, but nah. Guess not. And it doesn't even help that half the time, these characters aren't even relatable or interesting. Now, on the one hand, I do empathize with these characters. Mostly because they're just caught up in this whole plot without any control over it, while a diabolical organization of alien info guardians are constantly mind-fucking them every chance they get. Actually, that's the one part of the movie that's actually interesting. So the main villain, played by Colin Firth, is in possession of this alien vibrator object that allows him to enter people's thoughts and sort of hack their minds so that he can control them and see what they see. Honestly, it's a pretty cool idea, which allows the villain to play an active part in the story. But most of the time the main characters are just screwing themselves over by doing things that no one would even think about doing. No one in the right mind, at least. Like, Josh O'Connor's character is hiding out in this motel with his girlfriend, and he falls asleep with a piece of paper in his hand that has the hotel's name and address on it, while the villain hijacks his girlfriend's eyes and finds his location without a hitch. At this point, he should be thanking them for being so easy to track down. And if you think that this guy would get some kind of comeuppance at the end, sorry, but when he has a chance to fully silence everybody from broadcasting the truth to the world, he just gives up, sits himself down, and never speaks again. Yeah, David Koepp wrote himself into a corner with that one. Or just accepted that this was an appropriate ending for this character. I can't fucking wait to turn the fucking AC back on. But like I mentioned earlier, it's not all bad. And honestly, there's a handful of interesting things in this movie. Things that kept me invested. That is, until they're completely undone by themselves. Like I said, the villain is using a piece of alien tech that he doesn't 100% understand as a foil against the main character. Shows that he's at least trying to get a few steps ahead of the heroes. That is, until he just gives up at the end. And Colin Firth, credit where it's due, is genuinely good at playing this already tortured character, willing to torture himself even further to protect what he believes in. Josh O'Connor and Emily Blunt are acting their asses off trying to sell this material, and for the most part, they pull it off. However, their partners are eventually cast aside when they're no longer useful in the story, even though their perspective in this whole plot could be interesting on its own. And Spielberg is not at all a bad director. I mean, no shit, it's Spielberg. There's a reason why he can still do what he does today. The man's paid his dues. Many, many dues. His direction in Disclosure Day throughout the film is completely solid, and in some cases, quite surprising. There's a segment in the film where O'Connor is sneaking past some armed agents surrounding his safe house. That involves the camera tracking him, going in and around a wooden fence, and eventually into one of the agent's vehicles, in one take that could have only been coordinated by Spielberg. And it's one of the most technically impressive shots I've ever seen in a while. There is, however, one bit of direction that I was not okay with, and it shows up at the very end. But overall, it's once again a demonstration as to why he is the best at what he does. And I couldn't be more thankful that this movie is shot for a majority of the time in pretty darkly lit locations where I can still see what's happening. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Janusz Kaminski. I find his cinematography to be way too glossy, glowy, artificial looking, overexposed, inappropriately hyper-stylized for the genre he's assigned to, specifically when he works with Spielberg. But in an age where digital cinematographers are mostly relying on modern camera sensors to do all the heavy lifting, it is refreshing to see that there are still people working in the industry that know how to do a proper setup with lights. I just wish that he would just knock it off with the glossy, glowy film look. I mean, there's a few shots near the end that look so artificial that it looks like it's either fully CG or AI generated. Now, I'm not saying that they are, I'm just saying that's how they look. In fact, there's a moment at the end of the movie when archival footage of aliens is shown on the news and one guy asks, "Is this AI?" To which I said out loud, "No, that's a way better Spielberg movie." It's also kind of amusing when this movie's message is about bringing people together by a revelation of some kind of cosmic truth, when I was completely alone in the theater. Not to mention, with the World Cup going on, my entire district was almost completely abandoned on the way back home, save for one guy in an Audi tapping his cigarette out his window and blowing into my car. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, by the way. I really needed that. So I can't help but feel that this movie was just inappropriate and maybe just a tad out of touch. Now, about that direction I didn't particularly like. Now, it's a staple of a Spielberg movie to have the characters partake in the Spielberg gaze, to where they look up above, towards the sky, or in the horizon, and gaze at something wonderful off screen. It's a simple, yet effective way to sell the idea that there's something amazing and mesmerizing beyond our comprehension that no average person could possibly understand, emphasizing the weight and wonder of whatever it is they're looking at. Well, in this movie, this big revelation that is supposed to bring the entire world to a standstill has people not looking up, but looking down at their phones. Yeah, something was definitely lost there. Now, I do apologize if this is a whiny, surface level reading of this movie. I mean, it is a first impressions review after all. And I don't know, maybe in the distant future I might revisit it and do some kind of like reevaluation or a deep dive into it. But as of now, this film is just weak. It's just weak. Now, I want to re-emphasize, this is not Spielberg's worst movie, but it is his most uninteresting. Now, I hear you ask, then why talk about it at all? You want to know the real reason why I went to see this movie in theaters? The one special aspect of the movie that I haven't highlighted yet is John Williams. Now, I've seen Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, thinking that it was the last film John Williams would score. But once I heard he was doing the music for this film, a Spielberg film, I had to go and see it and pay a full price to see it in a theater, because his music just means that much to me. And yes, the music was in fact my favorite part of the movie. Hands down. As mediocre as the writing was, the music was putting in the extra bit of effort to get me inside the characters' heads and keep me fully invested in the story. And that is a feat that John Williams could do in his sleep. So all in all, I was here for John Williams and he did not disappoint. And I was also here for Spielberg because he is kind of a hero of mine since I was a little kid. And he can still direct the hell out of a movie. A lot of people are saying that he's too old and that he should just stop making movies. I disagree. He just needs a screenwriter that isn't David Koepp or Jeff Nathanson. So, finally, in summation, this is not Spielberg at his best. I left the theater completely uninspired and unchanged. The one saving grace of this movie was in fact the music, and a handful of like really cool shots. But even then, it doesn't make up for the rest of the film, sadly. Cards on the table, this was the wrong movie for the wrong time. My initial rating for this film was a 6.2 out of 10, but after talking about it, I'm gonna have to bump it down to a 5.9. It could have been done better. It could have been worse, but it also could have been done better. That's pretty much it. So much for my first review in 12 years, huh? I had high hopes for this one. Oh well. Hopefully next week's film is going to be better. I have my doubts, but who knows? Maybe it'll surprise me. And that's all I gotta say about Disclosure Day. Did I even see Disclosure Day?